My name is Jack, and I'm a 30-year-old guy who loves to travel. I have been to many places, and I've had my fair share of experiences with entitled people. However, this particular encounter takes the cake. It all started at the airport. I was waiting at the gate, ready to board my flight to Hawaii when I noticed a commotion. There was a woman with "I want to speak to your manager" haircut screaming at the gate attendant. "Excuse me, but I have first-class tickets. Why am I being held up?" The woman, who I now know is called Karen, screeched. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we need to board the families with young children and passengers with disabilities first," the gate attendant replied calmly. "Well, my children are my disability, and they need to board now," Karen snapped. I rolled my eyes at her entitlement and went back to reading my book. A few minutes later, Karen and her 3 brats arrived at the gate, and the chaos ensued. The children were running around, screaming and jumping on the seats, while Karen was on her phone, ignoring them. One of the kids, a boy of around 7 years old, knocked over my bag, and Karen didn't even apologize. "Watch where you're going, brat," I said, picking up my bag. Karen glared at me, and I could tell she was ready for a fight. "Excuse me, my children are allowed to have fun. This is a plane, not a library." "Well, maybe you should teach them some manners," I replied, trying to keep my cool. "How dare you! My children are perfect angels!" Karen shrieked. I shook my head and decided to ignore her, hoping that the flight would be short and uneventful. I was wrong. As soon as we took off, the kids started screaming and kicking the seats. Karen didn't do anything to calm them down, so I asked her politely if she could keep her kids under control. "How dare you tell me how to raise my children?" Karen yelled. "Ma'am, please keep your voice down," the flight attendant said. "I'll keep my voice down when this man apologizes for insulting my children," Karen barked. "I didn't insult your children. I just asked you to keep them under control," I said, trying to reason with her. "You're a horrible person. I demand to speak to the captain," Karen screamed. I sighed and put my headphones on, trying to drown out the noise. However, Karen wasn't done yet. She stood up, grabbed my headphones, and threw them across the aisle. "How dare you ignore me? I demand to be compensated for the inconvenience you've caused me," Karen shouted. "Ma'am, please sit down," the flight attendant said, trying to defuse the situation. But Karen was beyond reason. She lunged at me, trying to grab my phone, and I had to push her away to defend myself. She stumbled and fell, and I quickly moved to the other side of the aisle, fearing for my safety. "You're going to pay for this," Karen yelled, tears streaming down her face. At that moment, the flight attendant intervened and asked Karen and her brats to leave the plane. They complied, but not before Karen hurled a few choice words at me. I sighed in relief as they walked off, but I knew that the drama wasn't over yet. As soon as we landed, I was approached by the airline security team. They asked me to come with them to give a statement about what had happened. I explained everything that had transpired, and they thanked me for my cooperation. They also informed me that Karen and her children had been banned from flying with the airline ever again. Feeling relieved, I made my way to baggage claim to collect my luggage. As I was waiting for my bags to arrive, a man approached me. He was wearing a suit and tie and had a serious expression on his face. "Excuse me, are you Jack?" he asked. "Yes, that's me," I replied, wondering who he was. "My name is John, fake name, and I work for the airline. I just wanted to apologize for what happened on your flight. We take our passengers' safety very seriously, and we don't tolerate any kind of disruptive behavior," he said. I thanked him for his concern and apologized for the trouble I had caused. "Don't worry about it, sir. We appreciate your cooperation, and we hope that this incident won't deter you from flying with us again in the future," John said with a smile. I nodded, feeling grateful for his understanding. As I walked out of the airport, I couldn't help but think about Karen and her entitled attitude. It was clear that she was used to getting her way no matter who she had to step on to get it, but I refused to let her ruin my trip. I was going to enjoy my vacation in Hawaii, and nothing was going to stop me. As I arrived at my hotel, I couldn't help but feel proud of myself for standing up to Karen. I may have been sarcastic and snarky, but I stood my ground and didn't let her intimidate me. And as for Karen and her brats, well, they can find another airline to fly with, because on this one, we don't tolerate entitled behavior. I was driving around the parking lot of the grocery store, searching for a spot to park my car. After a few minutes, I finally found one near the entrance, but as I was about to pull in, a red sports car swooped in and stole my spot. I honked my horn and rolled down my window to confront the driver, a middle-aged woman with short hair, sunglasses, and a scowl on her face. "Excuse me, you just stole my parking spot," I said politely. The woman looked at me with contempt and replied, "Too bad, sweetie. First come, first served." I couldn't believe it. Who did this woman think she was? I decided to call her out on her entitled behavior. "You know, just because you have a fancy car doesn't give you the right to be rude and inconsiderate to others," I said. The woman, who I assumed was the infamous Karen that people talk about, scoffed at me and rolled up her window. I didn't let her behavior get to me and drove off to find another spot. As I was walking to the store, I couldn't help but feel annoyed by what just happened. I needed to vent, so I decided to call my friend Antonella to tell her about the encounter. "Can you believe it? This Karen stole my parking spot, and when I confronted her, she acted like she owned the place," I said. Antonella laughed and replied, "Typical entitled Karen behavior. You should have taken a picture and posted it on that subreddit, r entitled people." I agreed with her and promised to do just that. After finishing my shopping, I headed back to my car and noticed that the Karen's car was parked right next to mine. I rolled my eyes and opened my car door when suddenly the Karen approached me from behind. "You have a problem with me," she said aggressively. I turned around and saw the Karen standing only a few feet away from me, her fists clenched and her face contorted in anger. I remained calm and replied sarcastically, "No, not at all. I'm just admiring your parking skill." Karen didn't take kindly to my comment and charged at me, attempting to punch me in the face. I quickly sidestepped her and watched as she stumbled and fell to the ground. "Looks like you missed," I said, trying to hold back my laughter. The Karen quickly got up and screamed, "I'll have you know that I have connections. You'll pay for this." I rolled my eyes and got into my car, ignoring her threats. As I drove away, I couldn't help but feel sorry for all the Karens in the world. She was so consumed by her entitlement that she couldn't see how ridiculous she looked. As I arrived home, I immediately came here in this subreddit and posted a picture of the Karen's car parked in my spot. Within minutes, the post blew up with comments and upvotes, and I couldn't help but feel satisfied that justice was served. From that day on, I made sure to park my car in a different spot whenever I saw the Karen's car in the parking lot. I didn't want to deal with her entitled behavior ever again. But deep down, I knew that I would always have a good story to tell my friends about the time I encountered an entitled Karen. I woke up to the sound of my phone ringing. It was my friend Sarah, not her real name, who was in a bit of a pickle. Apparently, she had promised to bring her neighbor's cat to the vet, but she was stuck at work and couldn't make it. She knew I loved cats, so she asked if I could help out. I hesitated for a moment, but then I thought, what could go wrong? Famous last words. I arrived at the vet's office and saw a woman in her mid-30s pacing back and forth. She looked up at me and said, finally, "You're here. I need to check in my dog and no one is helping me." I was taken aback. "Sorry, I don't work here," I said. "I'm just here to drop off a cat." "Well, you should still help me. I'm sure you can do it," she replied. I couldn't believe it. Just because I was in a vet's office, this woman assumed I was an employee. I tried to explain that I didn't work there, but she wouldn't listen. She kept insisting that I help her check in her dog. "What's the matter with you people?" she yelled. "Can't you just do your job?" I rolled my eyes. "Lady, I don't work here. And even if I did, I wouldn't help someone as entitled as you." She huffed and puffed and stormed off to the front desk, leaving me alone with the cat carrier. As I was waiting for Sarah to arrive, the woman came back, this time with her dog on a leash. She marched up to me and demanded that I hold the leash while she filled out the paperwork. "I already told you I don't work here," I said, my patience wearing thin. "Then why are you here?" she asked. "I'm here to drop off a cat," I replied, trying to keep my cool. Well, can't you multitask? She said. I shook my head in disbelief. Listen, lady, just because I helped you once doesn't mean I work here. And even if I did, I wouldn't help someone as entitled as you. She lost it. She started screaming and cursing at me, calling me all sorts of names. She even tried to physically attack me, but I was able to dodge her punches. Security! She yelled. This girl is attacking me! Two security guards rushed over, and the woman started playing the victim, saying that I had attacked her for no reason. I was so angry and frustrated that I couldn't even speak. Luckily, Sarah arrived just in time to defuse the situation. She explained to the guards what had happened, and they escorted the woman out of the building. As we were leaving, Sarah turned to me and said, "Wow, that was crazy. You really held your own against that entitled lady." I smiled. Thanks, but I'm just glad it's over. I don't think I could handle another encounter like that. The rest of the day was a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened at the vet's office. I wondered why some people felt so entitled, why they thought they could treat others like dirt just because they were having a bad day. It wasn't until later that I realized why the encounter had affected me so much. You see, I used to be like that woman. I used to think that the world revolved around me, that everyone else was there to serve me. But then something changed. I had a wake-up call, a moment of clarity that made me realize how wrong I was. It was a busy afternoon at the coffee shop, and I had just ordered my favorite latte. I was about to pay when I noticed a young mother and her daughter behind me. The little girl looked up at the menu board and said, "Mommy, can I have a hot chocolate, please?" The mother looked at her and said, "No, we don't have the money for that right now. You'll have to settle for water." The little girl looked sad, and I felt sorry for her. As I walked towards the counter to collect my drink, I decided to do something nice for the little girl. I asked the barista to add a hot chocolate to my order and told her to give it to the little girl behind me when she placed her order. The barista smiled and nodded. As I was leaving, I heard the mother say to the little girl, "No, you can't have that. It's too expensive." But then the barista interrupted and said, "Excuse me, ma'am, the lady in front of you has already paid for your daughter's hot chocolate." The little girl's face lit up with joy, and she turned to me with a big smile. "Thank you so much," she said. "You're very welcome," I replied, feeling happy that I could make her day a little brighter. But then the mother's expression changed. She looked at me with disdain and said, "Why did you do that? Now, my daughter will expect people to pay for her things all the time." I was taken aback by her sudden hostility. "I just wanted to do something nice," I said, trying to defend myself. "You're just trying to make me look bad as a parent," she continued. "I don't need your charity. We can take care of ourselves just fine." I tried to explain that it was a small gesture of kindness, but the mother wasn't having any of it. She grabbed her daughter's hand and stormed out of the coffee shop, giving me a dirty look as she left. I was left feeling confused and a little hurt. I had meant well, but it seemed like my good intentions had been misunderstood. As I sipped my latte, I realized that sometimes, no matter how good our intentions are, we can't control how others perceive our actions. All we can do is try to be kind and hope that it makes a difference, even if it's just a small one.